train coming in, getting ready. It's probably a freight. Uncle Pete. When you say Uncle Pete, you mean Union Pacific. We're passing St. Paul's Lutheran, which I already went by and did that little sermon. All right, headed back. Listening to Vineland again, the first 4 chapters. It's brilliant, though. The more I listen to it, the more I'm like, Pynchon is just a genius. You know, I think he probably really loved writing Vineland. Vineland has all these characters that are connected, almost like vines. And it's all throughout California, coming into like 1983 or maybe even 84. But it's, because like he talks about how George Lucas's people came through and made Return of the Jedi, in the area. And he's got this character named Zoid Wheeler, who's a madman that, applies for mental disability check and has to jump through a window at least once a year to prove that he's actually crazy. He calls it window jumping. And he's kind of the type that will go off to, a thrift store or something and buy like a dress, just to prove he's crazy. Yeah, this is the he must increase, but I must decrease, John 3:30. Yep. But they're all connected, these characters. He's got a daughter named Prairie. And he's not real descriptive about everything. Like, for example, whenever Zoid goes to buy a female dress, he just describes him as smoking a joint, and then the next thing you know, he's just buying the dress. He doesn't go into details about him being high. It's just you get an idea of his personality from his, description, which is done pretty simply. It's not overly done or anything, he's just simply telling a story. And then Prairie talks to him about different things. They have like a father and daughter relationship, like conversation about, they call it fat talk, about grocery shopping and things like that. And so there's a sense of family that's involved in it, even though they're kind of a broken family. And Zoid's a very broken person. But the first 4 chapters, which is all I get because I'm really good, I'm only listening to the sample, there's a sense of comfort in it. And it's probably Pynchon escaping his own life. And I don't know what the problem with Thomas Pynchon was. I know that he was part of the Navy. I know that he looked very kind of strange. He probably didn't fit in. And these characters that he writes about don't fit in. They're not characters that fit. They're not the type of characters you'd meet in Sunday school and be like, oh, it's Zoid Wheeler, let's go all hang out. No, you'd meet Zoid Wheeler at a bar, and Zoid is kind of a broken character. Now, recently, I believe his name is P.T. Anderson. He's basically releasing a movie called One Battle at a Time, and that has Leonardo DiCaprio in it. He's playing a character named Bob Ferguson, which could be a version of Zoid. It's loosely based, just like Oil was loosely based on There Will Be Blood. But Oil was a novel, not by Pynchon, but before I spill out another mistake, I'll look it up to find the writer on that, but I think I know the name, but I'm not going to say it out right now. So he has done a few movies based on writer stuff. Inherent Vice is also Thomas Pynchon, or Pynchon. Sorry, I'm wearing the double glasses. It fits P.T. Anderson. He's a broken person, and a director that writes about broken people. He started off writing about, I don't even want to get into that, but I don't even want to talk about what he started off with, but anyway, I want to see it if I can. It looks different than the book, but I am getting into Thomas Pynchon a little bit more so in Vineland than the Crying of Lot 49, which I try to get into. Anyway, I gotta head back and feed Kitty. Kind of maybe I'm listening to the segment of when Hector, who is kind of a version of maybe the devil, or at least one of his minions, is talking to Zoid and trying to put all this fear into him. He's like a DEA agent. I think maybe Pynchon might have been talking a little bit about freedom, especially in California, on the type of people they're not all always wanting to be pressed on by the government. You know, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. They feel about the same when it comes to the government trying to control. And I guess in the 80s, there was a major drug problem. There was a war on drugs. Reagan was behind it. He mentions Reaganomics and defunding for some reason. His character is kind of hard to understand a little bit. I don't understand why he mentions defunding, but I do kind of see why he mentions Reagan economics, because Reagan was popular in the 80s. Usually writers, especially published writers, like maybe Thomas Pynchon, they are kind of prophets in a way. I know it sounds crazy. There's a prophecy in it, you know, in stories. So he might have been talking about maybe the future of California, and also how things are connected to, because I don't go beyond chapter 4. Sorry. I can't afford to buy the book, but I do plan to. But right now I'm just sticking from chapter 1 to chapter 4, which ends with Hector and Zoid talking at a bowling alley. And Zoid is eating enchiladas, and Hector is doing something weird with a tostada. He's like crumbling it up and reshaping it. It's very funny. I think it's that maybe Zoid has more than Hector, and Hector depends on the law. You go all the way back to John Bunyan. John Bunyan talking about how legality is not the way, that's the wrong way, right? We say it over and over again. We came to this country with a Bible and John Bunyan, a book called Pilgrim's Progress. It's actually true. Look it up. And what did he talk about? He talked about legality. He also talked about a character, or more of kind of like a representation of the devil called Apollyon, which represented that legality, right? That's part of what Hector is, probably. He's like Apollyon in a way, asking him, you know, and he's also knowing the whereabouts of his wife, which is his marriage, which is part of the church, right? Because, you know, Zoid would be married to his wife, and Hector is talking about her, and she's supposedly in protective custody, that kind of thing. He's brilliant. Pynchon is brilliant. He deserved to be published. There's the F-18 Hornet. Yeah, he deserved to be published. He deserves a reading. There is literary merit, but there's also a lesson. When there's a lesson, then there's literary merit. I think those things are tied, because, like, you know, Christ, Jesus, you know, wasn't much of a writer. He did write in the sand at one point. We don't know what he wrote exactly in the sand, but he did write something in the sand. But he mostly told stories, right? He told stories for the sake of parable, right? So we understand what a parable is. So they asked him a question, and what Jesus was saying was, I can't answer it in one word. I think that's what Jesus was saying. He didn't say that, but he couldn't answer it in one word. He did weep. That was one word in the Bible. Jesus wept. It's not one word, it's two, but it's a slow verse, or it's a little verse, is what I say. But Jesus told stories for the sake of answering the question, being an answerer. So he could say, well, I can answer it by telling you a story. That's the only way. Pynchon did the same. Now, I'm not saying Pynchon's with Jesus, because Thomas Pynchon wasn't, but the writer is along sometimes the same line in the fact that they're a storyteller. They have a characteristic of it, but they're not necessarily the Messiah, and neither am I. I didn't mean to say that I was one time. I think I was just trying to make a point about something. But all Messiah means is anointed one. But I don't think Thomas Pynchon went out to say that. I mean, there might have been some writers that have. I think John Lennon thought he was. But it doesn't matter if you say that you are, you know. We're ambassadors or representations of Christ. We want good for everybody, you know. You tell a story, it has a lesson, and it's worth the read. Or the listen. That one's named Toby. It's another stray that hangs around. He's got a collar, though, so he's probably also a part-time indoor cat. He likes to hang around and get extra food. Amy the witch is behind me, but she's in a position where I can give out location. Hey, Toby. By the way, Toby's kind of mean. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, goodness gracious. know it's rough. Kitty must wait for me on a cat tree like that. Same thing as last night, huh, Kitty? Same exact thing. It's almost amazing. Yeah, Kitty did the same exact moves. Scratching his back. Right, Edmund? Alright, we gotta feed the outdoor cat. That one's for Toby. No, Kitty, no. Don't. That one's for Toby, and that, Tabby. Sorry, Tabby. And this one's for Amy. There you go. There you go. Right, here we go with today's kitty. There's one kitty, 9 lives, and each life has a number. Numbers 1 through 9. And swirl the cat food. And pick a cat food. Today's kitty will be having fancy feast. Seafood feast and gravy grilled. Baby spoonfuls. Maybe good night. Probably won't vlog my ramen noodle tonight. We'll just end with Kitty. Right here. Right, Kitty? I'm gonna add like a little turkey snack to it. Later we add meat. Just ham. Probably wouldn't like that much. And later I'm gonna add these. Sure, honey roasted barbecue from Chic-fil-A. Get my nail. Takes me. Now I add the protein here. Just a minute. Actually, you know what? Right there. I'm gonna try to add something green. These are green onions. About as gourmet as you can get, maybe, with a ramen noodle. Getting 27 cents, some stores. 44 in others. Well, actually, these smaller packets are 27. Alright, now we put it in a bowl. And yeah. Actually, there, this now. And we'll add it after. We'll add it afterwards this time. See if we get more details. I'm the anal retentive chef. I hung out with the chef a little bit, and so I got to watch him cook a little bit. Fascinated by chefs. He's probably laughing. And I don't blame him. But, anyway, best I can right now. This is actually not too bad if you cook it. Fireball goes in there. Cinnamon. Just mix it on the top a little bit. Not too much. We'll mix it in just a minute. Oh well. Yeah, I'll be okay without that ice water. They said there's no ice water now. Alright, going to YouTube. There I am. Proud news.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. The rising.
Actually pretty good. Man. Here's that for later. Got some tea. Put some lime in it. Have a good night.